Lady Seraphine pressed the black stone ring into my palm before ordering her guards to throw me off my father's bridge. Rain streamed down the marble lions behind her. Beyond the railing, the poorest district in Greyhaven waited hundreds of feet below, buried beneath smoke, crooked roofs, and the refuse of the upper city. My second stepmother, Odessa, held an umbrella over her silver hair. She watched me sway between two guards with the theatrical sorrow she usually reserved for funerals she had caused. "You were given every advantage, Lucian," Odessa said, touching one jeweled hand to her chest. "Yet somehow, you still became the most disappointing Valin in 7 generations." My knees buckled. The guards tightened their grip before I struck the wet stones. They believed the drug in my wine had taken everything from me. I let them believe it. Lady Vera, the youngest of my 3 stepmothers, walked close enough for me to smell the clove oil she used on her sword hand. Unlike the other 2, she did not pretend to regret what was happening. "You should have signed the renunciation," Vera said as she lifted my chin with the edge of her glove. "You could have left Greyhaven with enough money to drink yourself to death somewhere warm." I stared at her through half-closed eyes. "You sold my home." Seraphine's expression did not change. Of the 3 women my father had married, only she had never needed cruelty to raise her voice. She could destroy a life while speaking as calmly as someone changing the arrangement of a dinner table. "We sold everything," Seraphine corrected me. "The estate, the western fields, the foundry, the river warehouses, and every remaining Valin property." Odessa gave me a sympathetic smile. "Even your horses? And the hollow?" I asked. That was the only question that disturbed them. Vera glanced at Seraphine. Odessa's smile tightened for less than a second. I stored both reactions away. For 16 years, the 3 of them had mistaken silence for stupidity. I intended to let them continue making that mistake until one of us was dead. Seraphine took the ring from my open palm and pushed it onto my finger. The crude band looked like something carved from a piece of burned stone. My father had kept it in a glass case beneath a marble statue of the Black Lion, the legendary guardian of House Valin. Every expert who examined the ring had declared it worthless. Seraphine leaned toward me. "You spent your childhood insisting this relic would recognize you one day. If it truly considers you the Valin heir, ask it to save you." She stepped back. The guards lifted me over the railing. Odessa raised her champagne glass. "To freedom." Vera looked into my eyes and smiled. Then they dropped me. Wind tore the breath from my lungs. The bridge vanished above me as I fell through layers of rain and smoke. I did not call for the Black Lion. I hooked 2 fingers inside the seam of my left sleeve and ripped it open. A length of braided wire slid into my hand. I had sewn it there 3 months earlier. For most of my life, I had expected Seraphine to kill me in a bedroom, a carriage, or an apparent hunting accident. The bridge had been only the 4th most likely location, but it was the easiest one from which to escape. I swung the wire toward a drainage brace beneath the bridge. The hook caught. The line snapped tight enough to wrench my shoulder from its socket. Pain burst through my arm, but the wire held. My fall became a violent arc that sent me crashing against the underside of the bridge. For 1 second, I hung above the hollow. Then, Vera's face appeared over the railing. She had seen the wire. Her sword flashed. The blade cut through the brace. I fell again. That was the part I had not predicted. I struck an old canvas awning, tore through it, bounced from a slanted roof, and smashed into a mound of wet coal. Something cracked beneath my ribs. My mouth filled with blood. Above me, the severed wire disappeared into the rain. I tried to stand, but the drug in my blood had been stronger than the dose I had prepared for. My antidote slowed it. It did not stop it. 3 shadows emerged from an alley. The Sander. First man wore a debt collector's red sash. The second carried a hooked club. The third dragged a boy of perhaps 9 years old by the collar. The child kicked wildly. "Let me go." The man with the club slapped him hard enough to drop him into the mud. "Your mother missed another payment," the collector said. "That means we take something worth selling." I could barely focus, but I noticed the insignia stamped on his sash. A crowned wolf. The personal mark of Lord Garrick Morcant, the man who had purchased my inheritance. That answered my question about the hollow. Seraphine had sold the district with the rest of the estate, and Morcant's men were already collecting from people who did not know their homes had changed owners. The boy tried to crawl away. The collector caught his ankle. I pushed myself out of the coal. The movement sent a blade of pain through my side, but it drew their attention. The man with the club stared at my torn evening coat. "What fell out of the sky?" "Leave him," I said. My voice came out rougher than I intended. The collector looked at the Valin crest fastened to my collar and laughed. You're a long way from your dinner table. Little lord. He released the boy and walked toward me. Good. Every step he took in my direction was one step farther from the child. I swayed deliberately, allowing my right shoulder to droop. The collector saw an injured nobleman who could barely stand. He did not notice me shifting my weight away from the broken ribs. He swung for my face. I stepped inside the blow. My forehead struck his nose. As he recoiled, I caught the red sash around his throat, turned beneath his arm, and used his momentum to drive him head-first into the coal pile. The second man charged with the club raised over his shoulder. I knew from the angle of his elbow that he intended a downward strike. I also knew I was too slow to avoid it. So I did not try. I grabbed the boy and twisted, putting my body between him and the weapon. The club came down. The black ring grew hot. The blow never landed. A roar rolled through the hollow. It was not loud. It was deeper than sound. A force that passed through stone and made every window in the alley tremble. Black fragments poured from the ring. They spread across my arm, leaped to the ground, and assembled themselves into 4 enormous paws. A lion made of black stone rose over me. Its armored shoulders nearly touched both sides of the alley. Cracks of golden light ran beneath its surface like fire trapped under volcanic glass. Its mane consisted of overlapping stone blades, and its eyes burned with the same gold. The collector stopped breathing. The black lion struck the ground once. The shockwave threw all 3 men against the walls. At the same moment, an invisible impact tore across my back. My knees hit the mud. Blood seeped through my shirt as 3 long wounds opened beneath the fabric. The lion had not been touched, yet I had received the cost of its attack. The men fled. The child scrambled toward me, but a woman dropped from the roof between us. She wore brown work trousers, heavy boots, and a sleeveless coat full of metal tools. Her dark red hair was tied at the base of her neck. Thin copper guards covered the first 2 fingers of each hand. She looked first at the lion, then at my crest. Her gray eyes hardened. "Hey Valin," she said. Of course. I tried to rise. The boy is hurt. I can see that. The woman crouched beside the child and touched 2 fingers to the stone beneath him. Her entire body went still. The golden-eyed lion watched her, but she did not look at it. Her attention had moved beneath the street. "Move," she ordered. The boy blinked at her. The woman seized his coat and threw him toward me. A heartbeat later, the alley collapsed. I reached for the child as the ground split. The woman drove a steel wedge into a crack beside her boot. She struck it once with the heel of her palm. The break changed direction. Instead of swallowing all 3 of us, the fractured street folded inward along a narrow line. The boy and I slid toward the wall. The woman jumped across the opening and caught a drainpipe. The black lion planted itself over us as bricks and broken beams rained down. Each impact against its stone body appeared across mine as a bruise, a cut, or a burst of pain. "Stop," I gasped. The lion turned its burning eyes toward me. I did not understand how to dismiss it. I only pictured the ring closing. The enormous creature shattered into streams of black dust and flowed back around my finger. The woman pulled herself onto solid ground. After checking the child again, she pointed toward the far end of the alley. "Run home, Pip." The boy hesitated beside me. "He saved me. He also brought a Valin war relic into a district full of wooden houses," she replied. "Go." Pip ran. The woman turned to me. "You can leave too." I looked at the collapsed street. "You knew it would break." I felt the support channel fail. "With your fingers?" Her stare sharpened. "You asked too many questions for someone bleeding on my road." I glanced at the copper guards covering her fingertips. They were not armor. They limited direct contact with whatever she touched. "You threw the boy before the surface moved," I said. "You didn't hear the collapse. You felt the fracture spreading through the stone." Her right hand curled into a fist. "Most people disliked being observed. People with secrets often treated observation as an attack. I understood that better than anyone. My name is Lucian Valin," I said. "I know who you are." "Then I'm at a disadvantage." The woman considered leaving me in the mud. Behind her, a support post shifted. I heard wood scraping against stone. She touched the wall, flinched, and pulled her hand back. Whatever she felt had hurt her. "Mira Thorn," she said at last. "And if you summon that thing near my workshop, I'll find out whether your priceless ring survives a furnace." I smiled. It survived my family. Mira did not smile back. That, she said, is not the recommendation you think it is. She left me there. I waited until she disappeared around the corner before looking at the crowned wolf stamped into the debt collector's abandoned sash. Morkant owned the men. But Seraphine had chosen where to drop me. The appearance of his collectors within minutes could have been a coincidence. I did not believe in coincidences engineered by Seraphine. I slipped the sash into my coat and followed Mira. Her workshop stood beneath an abandoned pumping station. Pipes crossed the ceiling. Half-built machines occupied every table, and dozens of small bells hung from wires along the walls. They rang whenever someone approached from the surrounding tunnels. Mira heard me enter without turning. I told you to leave. You also knew I couldn't walk far with broken ribs. That sounds like your problem. I studied the room. 4 exits. 2 visible traps. 1 hidden release beneath the central workbench. Oil stored far from the forge. Tools arranged by reach rather than size, suggesting Mira often worked during emergencies. A charcoal map of the hollow covered the rear wall. Red marks identified damaged water lines, unstable buildings, and access tunnels. 7 black circles had been added recently. Each circle surrounded a neighborhood entrance. What happens in 7 days? I asked. Mira's hammer stopped above a bent gear. She turned slowly. How do you know about 7 entrances? 7 circles. Each beside a route wide enough for demolition wagons. The marks are darker than the rest of the map, so they're recent. Morkant's collectors arrived wearing full enforcement colors, which means he no longer cares whether the Hollow knows he owns the land. I set the red sash on her workbench. He clears the district in 7 days. I concluded. Mira's face gave nothing away, but the hammer in her hand trembled once. I had found the fear she was hiding. 6 days. She corrected me. The notice arrived yesterday. And you have no evacuation plan. We are not evacuating. Morkant will bring at least 80 hired soldiers. He can bring 800. Then 800 men will remove you. Mira crossed the room until only the workbench separated us. Your family has been dumping broken machinery, sewage, and unwanted people into the Hollow for generations. Now you fall out of the sky. Summon the symbol carved above the gates that kept us out, and start explaining our chances of survival. She leaned closer. If you want gratitude, Lord Valin, climb back up and ask your marble lions. I don't want gratitude. What do you want? My stepmothers. That answer surprised her. I removed the Valin crest from my collar and placed it beside Morkant's sash. They sold my inheritance this afternoon, I said. Then they drugged me and threw me from the western bridge. Mira's eyes moved briefly to my injured shoulder. You brought wire, she observed. I expected an attempt on my life. But not that attempt. No plan survives the first sword. For the first time, something resembling interest entered her expression. Mira touched the sash with one copper-covered finger. You think the collectors were waiting for you? I think Seraphine wanted to meet them. Why? I don't know yet. Mira folded the sash and pushed it back toward me. Then work it out somewhere else. A bell rang near the northern wall. Mira reacted before the second chime. She snatched a short metal staff from beneath the bench and kicked the hidden release I had noticed. Plates slid across the workshop windows. 6 men stormed through the main entrance. They wore no uniforms, but their boots were upper city military issue. The first carried a weighted net. The next 2 had crossbows fitted with blunt iron bolts. They had come to capture, not kill. Under the table, Mira ordered. I'd rather not. The first crossbowman fired at my ring hand. I turned sideways. The bolt passed my chest and struck a pipe. Mira slapped her bare fingertips against the workbench. She shut her eyes for a fraction of a second, feeling the grain and joints inside the wood. Then she struck one corner with her staff. The entire bench came apart along its weakest seams. Its heavy top dropped, forming a barrier as 2 more bolts flew across the room. Mira rolled behind it. Still think I can't see you bleeding? I think you deliberately built furniture that could become cover. I dislike furniture that does only one job. The man with the net circled toward me. I allowed my gaze to dart toward the rear exit. He noticed and moved to block it. I was not planning to use that exit. I only needed him to think I was. He cast the net. I dropped beneath it, seized the lower edge, and wrapped it around his front ankle. When I pulled, Mira struck the floor beside his other foot. A loose plank snapped upward and caught his knee. He fell hard. The 2 of us had never fought together. But she understood intention. As quickly as I did. That made her dangerous. It also made her useful. The remaining men spread out. Their leader stayed near the doorway. He wore soft gloves and issued no commands. Yet every attacker checked his position before changing direction. I threw a broken gear at him. One of the crossbowmen abandoned his target to block it. There. I had identified the man they valued. I rushed him. 2 attackers moved to intercept me exactly as expected. Mira drove her staff through the exposed teeth of the pumping mechanism beside the wall. The gears locked. Pressure screamed through the pipes. Down! She shouted. This time. I obeyed. A valve burst above us. Scalding vapor filled the workshop, splitting the attackers and blinding the men around their leader. I closed my eyes and followed the sound of his retreating boots. When I caught him, I twisted his gloved hand behind his back and pressed a shard of metal beneath his jaw. Who sent you? I asked. He stopped struggling. Lady Vera wants the ring returned. Mira emerged through the steam. Returned? The captive laughed nervously. It belongs to House Valin. It's on a Valin, Mira said. She said he stole it. Of course, Odessa had already begun shaping the public story. By morning, I would be a disgraced heir who had attacked his guardians and fled with a family treasure. What were your orders after taking the ring? I asked. The man remained silent. I increased the pressure on his wrist. You were given 2 prices. I continued. 1 for the ring and 1 for bringing me alive. The second price was higher. But Lady Vera did not explain why. His breathing changed. Mira noticed. You're guessing, she said. No. His men aimed at my hand. But they used blunt bolts. If the ring were the only objective, killing me would simplify their work. The captive swallowed. I brought my mouth closer to his ear. Vera also told you not to touch the black stone directly. His eyes widened. That part had been a guess. Now it was not. Mira saw the answer on his face. They know what the ring does. The captive threw his head backward, trying to break my nose. I moved before he did. His skull struck my shoulder instead. Mira swept his legs from under him. The other men fled through the steam, abandoning their leader. I let them go. Mira rounded on me. Why didn't you stop them? Because frightened men travel quickly. They'll report where you are. They already knew where I was. Now they'll report that I'm injured, confused, and dependent on the relic. Mira glanced at the collapsed bench, the trapped leader, and the crossbow bolt I had avoided without summoning the lion. You're none of those things. I'm injured. You know what I mean. I did. I had spent 11 years appearing less capable than I was. At 8, I solved a logistics puzzle my father's steward had placed on his desk. The steward disappeared within a month. At 10, I spoke fluent Veran in front of Lady Vera. My language tutor was dismissed the following morning. At 12, I discovered that Odessa's charitable kitchens existed only on paper. The accountant who helped me vanished before winter. Talent attracted attention. Attention attracted Seraphine. So I became careless in public. I lost fencing matches I could have won. I misquoted books I knew by heart. I drank, gambled small amounts, and encouraged the city to regard me as a harmless disappointment. Meanwhile, I studied the servants' passages, memorized estate accounts, trained with workers who did not know my name, and learned to recognize every lie my stepmothers told by the way they prepared to tell it. I had survived because Seraphine believed I lacked the discipline to threaten her. That advantage had ended the moment Vera saw my wire. Your stepmothers don't know how much you can do, Mira said. They know I deceived them. They don't know for how long. And you want to keep it that way. For as long as possible. Mira crouched beside the captive and removed his glove. A black spiral had been branded into his palm. The same spiral appeared faintly on the inside of my ring. Mira looked from the mark to me. This was never a robbery. No. I agreed. It was a test. We locked the mercenary in an empty water tank. Mira wanted to question him again after his fear had time to mature. I wanted him to escape. I loosened one hinge while pretending to inspect the tank. Mira caught me doing it. She said nothing until we returned to the workshop. You want him to carry a message, she said. I want him to believe he escaped before carrying it. What message? That the lion hurts me whenever it is struck. Mira stared at the blood soaking my shirt. Does it? Yes? And you want the women trying to kill you to know that? I want them to believe they can exhaust me by creating people who need saving. Her expression darkened as she understood. That is exactly what they'll do. Yes. Then why encourage it? Because Seraphine is cautious. If she believes I understand her true objective, she'll change the structure of the game. I need her to use the plan she prepared before I fell. Mira folded her arms. You're using yourself as bait. I'm using her certainty as a cage. And everyone she endangers? That is why I need you. Mira gave a humorless laugh. There it is. What? The nobleman's real voice. You don't ask for help. You arrange the board until helping you appears to be everyone's only rational choice. The accusation struck closer than I wanted. I looked at the map. Would you prefer that I lie? I would prefer that you remember the pieces on your board are people. Mira removed the copper guards from her fingers. The skin beneath them was red and scarred, with thin black lines running under several nails. My ability is called Fault Sense, she said. When I touch stone, metal, or wood, I feel how force moves through it. I can find a crack before it reaches the surface. I can also feel every connected weakness at once. She flexed her hand, wincing. The larger the structure, the more it hurts. If I reach too far, my fingers go numb. Once, I lost the use of my right hand for 6 months. I looked at the bells, pressure gates, and emergency mechanisms around the workshop. You built all of this without being able to hold a tool properly. I learned to use my left hand. There was no pride in her answer. Only fact. Why tell me? I asked. Because you already worked out half of it. And the half you invented would probably be worse. Mira replaced the guards. My condition is simple. She continued. You can stay until the demolition. You will help me defend the hollow. You will not make decisions about this district without the people who live here. And if your private war puts children in danger, I will deliver you to Morcant myself. Agreed. You answered too quickly. I decided before you finished. That does not reassure me. It wasn't meant to. Over the next 2 days, Mira introduced me to the hollow. Nearly 4,000 people live beneath Greyhaven's western cliffs. Most repaired, sorted, or reused whatever the upper city discarded. Roofs were made from ship plates. Old carriage axles powered water pumps. Broken stained glass had been ground into tiles that caught what little sunlight reached the streets. The district looked temporary from above. From within, it felt stubbornly alive. Mira knew every structural weakness in it. She could touch the side of a tenement and tell which floor had overloaded its beams. She could place her fingertips against a water pipe and locate a blockage 3 streets away. She repaired a disabled lift by striking a single pin that looked no different from 20 others. But Fault Sense did not make the work effortless. After examining the northern retaining wall, she hid her right hand in her coat for nearly an hour. When I asked about it, she told me to inspect the evacuation tunnels. I did not ask again. Instead, I redesigned the work schedule so no task required her to examine an entire structure alone. She noticed by sunset. You changed the teams, Mira said as we stood above the northern gate. The old assignments were inefficient. You placed someone who can test individual joints beside me at every location. A fortunate side effect. Mira looked at me. You are terrible at kindness. I have had little practice. You're excellent at manipulation. I had excellent teachers. That answer ended her amusement. Below us, residents pulled chains through a series of pulleys. If Morcant's wagons entered through the gate, the chains could overturn the first 2 vehicles and block the street. It would not defeat an army. It would buy time. Mira rested her elbows on the railing. Who taught you to fight? People my family didn't consider important enough to watch. And strategy? My stepmothers. They trained you? Every failed attempt to deceive me was a lesson. Mira studied my face. How many attempts? Enough that I stopped counting. She did not offer pity. I was grateful for that. Instead, she asked, why didn't you expose them? To whom? The city council. Half of them owed Seraphine money. The other half wanted Valin land. Evidence would have disappeared before the first hearing. Then why stay until I turned 20? The estate legally belonged to the guardianship. If I ran, they could declare me unfit and retain control permanently. I thought surviving until my birthday would be enough. But they sold everything first. Yes. For years I had prepared for poison, assassins, forged scandals, and manufactured debts. I had expected Seraphine to try to keep my inheritance. I had not expected her to destroy its value by selling it beyond recovery. That was my mistake. Intelligence did not make me infallible. It merely allowed me to understand exactly how I had failed. Mira touched the Stone railing. There's a fracture beneath us. I stepped back. But she remained where she was. Shouldn't we move? It won't collapse for another year. Then why mention it? Because not every weakness means immediate destruction. Her eyes met mine. Some things can still be repaired if people stop pretending the crack isn't there. Before I could answer, a bell sounded from the market. Not one of Mira's warning bells. This was a fire bell. Smoke rose between the roofs. Mira was running before the second ring. I followed her down the stairs. 3 buildings were burning when we reached the market. Flames had started simultaneously at ground level, each beside a different exit. Seraphine's first move. People crowded into the central square, exactly where attackers would want them trapped. At the eastern end, a fuel cart rolled downhill toward the fire. Its driver was gone. I calculated the slope, wheel speed, and distance. Mira. The pump. She glanced at the old pressure station beside the square. Main wheel is seized, she said. Can you break it? That would release the entire reservoir. We need the eastern pipe, not the square outlet. She understood immediately. Mira sprinted toward the station. I climbed onto an abandoned stall and shouted for everyone to move north. Several residents hesitated when they recognized me, so I pointed toward a woman they trusted. Follow Anya, I called. Not Meher. Anya, the district's baker, did not waste time asking how I knew her name. She began directing families through the northern lane. The fuel cart struck a broken paving stone and bounced. Another 20 seconds. I summoned the black lion. It formed in front of the largest burning building and drove its shoulder beneath a collapsing balcony. The weight transferred into its body. My left leg folded beneath me as pain cracked through the bone. I stayed upright by gripping a post. A little girl remained beneath the balcony. Her father ran toward her, but falling timber blocked his path. I sent the lion forward. It shielded the child as the balcony collapsed. Every beam that struck its back opened another wound across mine. Seraphine had understood the bond. She had arranged the fire to make restraint look like cowardice. The fuel cart was 10 seconds away. Mira reached the pressure station and tore off her copper guards. She pressed both hands to the central wheel. Her back arched. For an instant, I thought the current had seized her. Then she opened her eyes. Third pipe, she shouted. Break the blue collar. I dismissed the lion and limped toward the pipe junction. 6 collars sat beneath the station, all covered in soot. None looked blue. Then I saw a sliver of old paint. I drove a fallen iron bar into the third collar. Nothing happened. The fuel cart entered the square. Mira struck the main wheel with her staff. The blue collar exploded. A horizontal torrent blasted across the street. It struck the fuel cart, turned it sideways, and carried it through the open wall of an abandoned warehouse. The cart detonated inside the empty building. The pressure wave threw both of us to the ground. When I regained my vision, Mira was lying beside the broken station. Blood ran from her fingertips. Her hands twitched without closing. I crawled toward her. Can you feel them? She laughed once through clenched teeth. Unfortunately, the residence contained the remaining fires before nightfall. No one died. That should have felt like victory. Instead, I found a glass token inside the burned fuel cart. A black spiral had been etched into its surface. They wanted me to know. I showed it to Mira after her hands had been wrapped. She held the token between her bandaged palms. They burned 3 streets to make you summon the lion. They also learned I can dismiss it quickly. Is that important? It means I retain control, even under pain. Mira looked toward the families sleeping inside the market hall. What happens when they decide this wasn't enough? They target something the lion cannot protect without remaining exposed. The retaining wall. Yes. Mira rose. You can barely walk, I said. And my wall is about to become part of your family argument. She took 1 step and nearly fell. I caught her around the waist. Mira's bandaged hand pressed against my chest. For a moment, neither of us moved. You're shaking, I said. So are you? My ribs are broken. My hands are attempting to remember their profession. You don't have to examine the whole wall tonight. Yes, I do. No. You have already mapped the surface. Fractures. I need only the points an attacker would choose. Mira frowned. You can't sense them. I can sense Seraphine. I took her charcoal map and marked 3 locations. She prefers damage that appears natural. She'll avoid the center because a direct collapse would expose Sabotage. She'll weaken one side. Wait for us to reinforce it. Then break the opposite anchor, so our own repairs increase the load. Mira stared at the marks. That is what I would do, she admitted. I know. You've known me for 2 days. I watched you dismantle your workbench to create cover. You build every solution. With a second purpose. Seraphine does the same thing. Except her second purpose is usually murder. Mira considered the wall. Then added a fourth mark. You missed the drainage arch, she said. If she breaks this point, rainwater does the rest. Then we protect all 4 without showing which ones we know about. Mira's expression changed. It was not trust yet. It was recognition. For the first time, she was looking at me not as a Valin she had been forced to tolerate, but as someone capable of standing beside her. We spent the night building false reinforcements. At dawn, Vera's saboteurs entered through the drainage tunnels. They attacked the 2 anchors we had left visibly unguarded. Both tunnels collapsed behind them. No one in the hollow was injured. By noon, the captured saboteurs had repeated the story. Odessa was spreading through Greyhaven. I had murdered loyal Valin guards, stolen the Black Lion ring, and taken the hollow hostage. Mira read the printed notice twice. They describe you as unstable, violent, and barely educated. The barely educated part is an old favorite. She says you were expelled from 3 academies. I attended none of them. Mira lowered the paper. Did you spend your entire life creating a false version of yourself? Not my entire life. How much of it, if I can touch its central frame? That is in the middle of the army. I noticed. Below us, Seraphine stepped into the courtyard. She looked directly toward our hiding place. Lucian, she called. The district has less than an hour. Mira whispered. She knows. She suspects. That distinction will comfort me when the archers arrive. Seraphine lifted Pip onto the courtyard platform. A guard held a knife to the boy's throat. My vision narrowed. She chose him deliberately. Mira said. Yes. The child who had awakened the lion. Seraphine wanted to recreate the choice and force me to reveal the ring. I stepped onto the roof edge. Mira caught my sleeve. She has archers on both towers. I know. Then tell me you have a plan. I have the beginning of one. That is not the same thing. It rarely is. I raised my empty hands and walked down the roof stairs. Mira disappeared in the opposite direction. Seraphine watched me enter the courtyard. Call the lion, she ordered. Release Pip. Call it first. No. The guard pressed the knife closer to the boy's throat. I studied Seraphine's position. The archers, the gate mechanism, and Morcant standing beneath the eastern balcony. Then I knelt. Odessa emerged from the house and laughed softly. At last. I placed my palm against the stones. The black lion erupted beneath Pip. It did not attack the guard. It merely placed its armored body between the knife and the child. Arrows rained into it. Wounds opened across my shoulders and back. But I kept my hand on the ground. Morcant ran toward the lion with a control chain marked by the black spiral. He believed the relic's physical body could be bound. That was Seraphine's final misunderstanding. The black lion did not obey my commands blindly. It obeyed the choice that had made me its master. I could direct where it stood. I could not make it abandon someone helpless merely to protect me. Morcant threw the chain around its neck. The lion remained still. For one triumphant second, he believed he had captured it. Then Mira struck the manor's western support brace. She had crossed the roof, entered the old bell tower, and used fault sense to trace every force line running through the courtyard. The support did not collapse. It shifted. The courtyard tilted just enough for the control chain's counterweight to roll downhill. Morcant was dragged across the stones and slammed into the gate mechanism. The impact released the portcullis. Pip ran. I dismissed the lion before the archers could fire again. Seraphine drew a concealed blade and came for me herself. She was not a fighter. She did not need to be. She had studied my injuries and aimed directly for my damaged leg. I moved as though I intended to retreat. Seraphine adjusted her angle to cut me off. That placed her beneath the archer's blind side. I caught her wrist. You predicted I would save Pip, I said. Her face remained composed. You always need to be good, Lucian. It makes you extraordinarily easy to control. No. You predicted the first move. I turned her toward the open gate. Beyond it, every false route I had planted inside the manor had sent her reserve guards toward the stables. The courtyard stood nearly empty. But you never learn to predict what happens after I know the trap. Mira dropped from the wall beside us. She struck Seraphine's blade at the point where the metal had been repaired years earlier. The weapon split in half. We ran for the hollow. The final battle began at the northern gate. Morkant's demolition wagons entered in 2 columns. He expected frightened residents and 1 injured relic master. He found a district that had spent 6 days preparing. Chains overturned the first wagons. Rooftop teams showered the soldiers with lime dust, blinding them without killing them. Water gates transformed 3 streets into mud channels. Hidden barriers rose behind the advancing troops, separating them into small groups. I directed the residents from the old pumping tower. Mira moved through the battle itself. She placed her hands against walls and signaled which routes remained safe. She broke weapon mechanisms, disabled wagon axles, and collapsed empty walkways after soldiers crossed them. Every use of fault sense damaged her hands. By the time the stone crusher reached the central square, blood had soaked through both bandages. The machine was larger than I expected. Its front blade could demolish an entire row of houses in one pass. Morkant rode behind it. Seraphine and Odessa had escaped the manor and joined him. Vera, freed by Morkant's soldiers, stood on the machine's upper platform with one arm bound against her chest. All 3 stepmothers had arrived for the end. Odessa used a speaking horn to address the district. Lucian Valin has brought war into your homes, she announced. Surrender him, and Lord Morkant will show mercy. This time, no gate opened. Rusk climbed onto a roof where everyone could see him. They promised us that once, he shouted. The demolition machines moved before Lucian ever left. Odessa raised the horn again. Rusk threw a piece of scrap metal. It struck the horn and knocked it from her hands. The people of the hollow answered by tightening the chains across the square. Morkant ordered the crusher forward. Mira, I called. She stood 30 feet from the machine. Too far, she shouted back. I need the frame. The crusher's blade entered the first house. Families had already evacuated, but the building collapsed into the street. The next row still contained people too elderly or injured to move quickly. I summoned the black lion in front of them. It braced against the blade. The crusher drove forward. Pressure crushed the air from my lungs. The lion's stone paws dug trenches through the road. Cracks spread across its armored chest and appeared at the same time across my ribs. I could not stop the machine for long. Mira ran beneath it. Vera saw her and jumped from the platform. They collided beside the grinding wheels. I wanted to send the lion to Mira. I could not. If it moved, the crusher would reach the families behind it. That was Seraphine's true final trap. Not choosing between the upper city and the hollow. Not choosing between strangers and myself. Choosing between Mira and everyone else. Mira looked at me through the machinery. Hold it, she shouted. Vera slashed at her injured hands. Mira blocked with her staff, but the blow drove her against the wheel housing. I kept the lion in place. Not because Mira mattered less. Because she had not asked me to save her. She had asked me to trust her. Mira tore off her copper guards and pressed both hands against the crusher's central frame. Her body convulsed. Fault sense passed through the entire machine. Gears, axles, supports, counterweights, and thousands of moving connections. The scale of it should have overwhelmed her. Vera raised her sword. I pulled a lever on the pumping tower. A cable snapped tight around Vera's ankle. Mira had installed it that morning. Vera was dragged away before the blade fell. Mira kept both hands on the machine. Lucian! She screamed. Left wheel third inner spoke. I understood. The machine's weakness was hidden where no fighter could reach it. But the black lion could not leave the blade. I looked at the residents around me. For most of my life, I had survived by hiding what I knew and controlling every piece of information. That method had kept me alive. It could not save a district. I shouted Mira's discovery to everyone. Workers repeated it across the square. The message traveled from roof to roof until a team beneath the crusher heard it. 3 metalworkers crawled under the left wheel. One carried a hammer. Another positioned a wedge. Rusk struck the third inner spoke. The wheel shattered. The crusher twisted sideways. The black lion shoved. The entire machine overturned. Morkant fell from the platform. Odessa landed in the mud beside him. Vera tried to rise, but residents surrounded her. Seraphine alone remained standing. She seized Pip again. A broken blade appeared against his throat. Remove the ring, she ordered me. I dismissed the lion. The courtyard became silent. Seraphine dragged Pip onto the overturned machine. Give it to me. I walked toward her. Mira tried to rise beneath the frame, but her hands could no longer. Support her. Lucian. She called. I know. I stopped in front of Seraphine and forced the ring to reappear above my skin. Then I removed it. Seraphine released Pip and snatched the black band. The boy ran to Mira. Seraphine pushed the ring onto her finger. Nothing happened. Command it, she demanded. I looked at the woman who had spent 16 years turning every virtue into a vulnerability. You still think being its master means controlling it? The ring cracked around her finger. Black dust poured to the ground. The black lion formed between Seraphine and Pip. It did not face me. It faced her. Seraphine stumbled backward. I have the ring. You have the stone. I stepped beside the lion. The relic chose the person willing to stand between power and someone who could not defend themselves. You spent your life standing behind power and sending others ahead of you. Seraphine lifted the broken blade. Kill her. Morkant shouted at me. Prove it obeys you. I could have ordered the lion forward. Seraphine no longer had a weapon capable of harming it. She stood alone, surrounded by people she had tried to erase. Killing her would have been easy. That was why the lion did not move. It had never chosen me because I was the most powerful person in the courtyard. It had chosen me because, when power was easiest to abuse, I had placed myself between it and someone weaker. I struck the broken blade from Seraphine's hand myself. She tried to reach for my injured leg. I anticipated the movement, caught her arm, and brought her to the ground without the lion's help. For the first time in my life, Lady Seraphine looked up at me without certainty. You would have inherited everything, she said. We made you capable of surviving it. No, I replied. You made me capable of surviving you. Greyhaven's council did not return my inheritance. The properties had been sold through legal contracts, divided among creditors, and stripped of anything valuable. Morkant's remaining allies seized his accounts as soon as his defeat made loyalty unprofitable. Odessa's public story collapsed when hundreds of soldiers admitted they had received demolition orders before my arrival in the Hollow. Vera lost the arm she had used to wield her chain, though Mira prevented the wound from killing her. Seraphine never apologized. Even after the council imprisoned her for conspiracy and attempted mass displacement, she insisted that the Hollow should have been sacrificed for Greyhaven's economic future. I stopped calling her mother. That hurt her more than hatred would have. The only Valin property no one had purchased was an abandoned foundry beside the Hollow. Its roof leaked. Its furnace had cracked. And the western wall leaned far enough to frighten sensible buyers. Mira touched that wall on the morning we took possession. It can be repaired? She said. Is that your professional judgment? It is my professional warning that you will spend an unreasonable amount of money proving me right. I have almost no money. Mira considered that. Then we'll have to be intelligent. We converted the foundry into a public workshop. Mira designed new water pumps, collapsible barriers, and buildings that could be repaired, one section at a time. I created a district ownership charter that prevented any single person, including me, from selling the Hollow again. Mira made me revise it 9 times. On the 10th draft, she signed. Her hands recovered slowly. Fault sense returned to 3 fingers on her left hand and 2 on her right, when a structure was too large for her to examine safely. She trained teams to test it in sections. She no longer carried the entire district through her own nerves. I no longer hid every plan inside my own mind. The black lion stopped sleeping beneath the Valin crest. Most days, it rested on the foundry roof while children climbed over its stone back. It never obeyed them. It tolerated them, which was more patience than it had ever shown Morkant. One evening, Mira found me watching workers remove the final Valin emblem from the foundry gate. Regret it? She asked. The emblem? Everything. I looked across the Hollow. New roofs replaced the buildings destroyed during the siege. Water ran through repaired channels. Rusk's daughters painted the doors of the public workshop while Pip attempted to persuade the black lion to chase a wooden ball. My stepmothers sold everything my father left me, I said. Mira slipped her scarred fingers into mine. That was not the question. No, it was not. I had lost the estate, the warehouses, the family name's authority, and the future I had spent years preparing to inherit. But the future I built with Mira did not require me to pretend I was less intelligent so the people beside me would allow me to live. It did not require her to destroy her hands, repairing every crack alone. We had chosen each other with full knowledge of what the other could do. That was rarer than any relic. I regret that I once thought owning those things would prove I deserved them, I told her. Mira leaned against my shoulder. And now? I watched the black lion lower one massive paw over the wooden ball before Pip could retrieve it. Now I know inheritance is only something the dead place in your hands. I said. What you choose to protect with it is what makes it yours. The black lion had chosen only one master. I proved worthy of it by building a home that would never need